Shocking words from Erkan Meriç about Hazal Subaşı. A New Year confession that set the fandom buzzing. "We still keep in touch," he said, and the internet froze for a heartbeat. Welcome to Turkish series stars. Before we dive into this story, if you love following the real emotions behind the spotlight, you're in the right place. Today we're pulling back the curtain on a bond that never needed a headline to exist, yet somehow ended up defining an era for thousands of viewers who watched them grow up on the same set, under the same pressure, and with the same dream. This is the quiet, steady connection between Erkan Meriç and Hazal Subaşı, the kind of friendship that outlives trends, outlasts rumors, and, as the new year dawned, surfaced once again with a single, sincere admission. There are friendships in this industry that come and go with projects, swept away by schedules and contracts. Then there are those that deepen with time, turning into something stronger than the roles that first brought them together. Erkan and Hazal fall into that rare second category. He was a newcomer stepping into a leading role for the first time. She was the partner who stood across from him, mirroring his lines, matching his rhythm, and protecting that delicate, early-stage courage an actor needs when the lights get brighter than expected. Years passed, careers branched off into new territories, headlines piled up, and the world changed. But when the year turned and the cameras caught Erkan at an event, his words cut through the noise. "Hazal has a very special place in my life." It didn't feel like nostalgia. It felt like honesty. Let's rewind to where it all began, Adini Sinkoy. A phenomenon for its time, a touchstone for audiences who fell in love with Ömer and Zara as if they were next-door neighbors whose story they'd been witnessing forever. That series didn't just succeed, it minted a duo. For Erkan, it was a first. A first major lead, a first encounter with sudden, all-consuming attention, a first test of becoming a screen partner people would root for. For Hazal, it was a chapter of discipline and dedication, where her commitment on set created a safe space in which everyone could work, breathe, and give more. When Erkan recalls those days, the detail that sticks is disarmingly simple: "She supported me when I needed it most." In that sentence lies the real connection, not the glamour, not the gossip, just two colleagues holding a fragile moment steady so it wouldn't break. There's a reason that specific period still echoes through their lives. Early stardom can be loud, but inside it, the mind is very quiet, and very vulnerable. Erkan had the gravity of a character who required restraint and strength, and at the same time he had the pressure of a tidal wave of public attention. Hazal was there, not as a savior, but as a partner. A professional who took the work seriously, rehearsed breath by breath, carried her scenes with clarity, and raised the level of the entire set simply by showing up prepared. "My first on-screen partner," he said in reflection. But beneath that phrase is another truth: your first partner shapes your sense of the craft. The cadence you share, the trust you build, the security of knowing that on a long shooting day, you're not alone. Fans often talk about Ömer and Zara as if they were neighbors whose arguments and reconciliations were heard through thin apartment walls. Those characters mattered because they weren't just symbols of romance, they were the training ground for two young actors learning how to hold the gaze of a nation. Erkan has admitted in various moments that he understands Ömer's restraint, the way he masks turmoil with composure, the way silence can become armor. That alignment isn't coincidence. It's the reason certain scenes felt like living truth. And with Hazal, Zara wasn't only an image of grace under fire, she was a reflection of the resilience Hazal brought to the set, the kind that keeps a long project from losing its heartbeat. Years later, when Erkan says something as simple as "we still keep in touch," most people hear a polite phrase. But there's more in those words if you listen closely. It's less about routine and more about acknowledgement. The kind you send on special days, the kind that shows you remember where you started and who stood beside you when you were learning to stand at all. That's why his New Year remark landed with such force. It wasn't a throwaway line. It was a sign that some bonds outgrow their original context and settle into a more grounded place, where gratitude lives. Of course, admiration runs in both directions. Over the years, Hazal has spoken with respect about Erkan's steadiness, his self-possession on set, the way he can tunnel into a character and stay there until the work is done. She has never needed flourishes to describe him. She doesn't inflate, she observes. And those observations paint a picture of a partnership built not on spectacle, but on shared craft. When he says he values her courage to reinvent herself, to take on new rhythms and genres, he's not making a generic compliment. He's pointing to the career choices, the risks, the evolution that, from one professional to another, command a specific kind of respect. The industry moved on after Adini Sinkoi, as it always does. She took roles that brightened her range, tried tones that tested new muscles, and proved she could pivot without losing the sincerity audiences loved. He sought out depth and change, creating characters who carried weight beneath the surface. Different paths? Yes. Different visions? Sometimes. But what never bent was the line connecting them back to that first set, where they learned together what it means to carry a story day after day without dropping it. As the calendar turned, that's what people felt in Erkan's words. He didn't promise reunions. He didn't tease secret projects. He simply let people see that he hasn't forgotten the shape of those early days, or the person who helped him hold them. There's a rumor that on anniversaries and New Year's, there's always a message exchanged, not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for themselves. Small gestures, big meaning. You don't have to say much when the past already speaks. If you follow this industry closely, you know that it often confuses volume with importance. Loud doesn't mean lasting. Short-lived fires heat up the room and go dark. But a steady flame is harder to notice and far more difficult to extinguish. In that sense, what Erkan said at the start of the year felt like a reminder to everyone watching: you can move forward without erasing where you came from. And if you keep your values intact, the most meaningful connections tend to stay exactly where they belong, close, even if quiet. Listen closely and you'll hear another layer in his confession, a promise to continue choosing with heart. He didn't outline a 5-year plan, he didn't map out a strategy. He admitted that uncertainty is part of the path and that he is guided by instinct. That's not just career advice. That's an explanation for why what he has with Hazal has endured. When your compass is internal, you don't burn bridges to light your way, you carry your own lantern and you honor the people who helped you find it. People love to talk about love stories, and whenever they do, they ask for drama. But it's often the friendships, the rare ones that hold their shape over years, that tell us what actually lasts. The truth is simple: they went their separate ways professionally, they built new lives, they set out to chase new dreams. And yet the respect between them survived the storms and the quiet afternoons alike. The New Year confession didn't change that, it just made it visible again. Maybe one day they'll share a set again. Maybe Omer and Zara will echo faintly behind 2 new characters, tethering the future to a very specific memory in the audience's hearts. Or maybe this friendship will continue exactly as it is now, dignified, off the record, unshaken by the seasons. No matter what happens, what we know is enough: some connections don't bow to time. They simply adapt. They take on a new form that fits the present while keeping the past safe inside it. There's one more detail worth holding on to. When Erkan says goodbye after an interview, he sometimes adds a gentle "see you later," the kind that sounds casual but carries intention. In a world where most farewells are just lines, this one feels like a bridge. It hints at continuity, at a relationship that's neither overhyped nor over. It understands that what matters doesn't require proof. When he follows that with praise for Hazal, recognizing how she's earned her place again and again, how she refuses to repeat herself, how she stands tall in every project, it lands like a benediction. And what about Hazal's side? She is rarely one to stage sentiment. If she has said anything, it has been measured and rooted in experience: how he brings presence to a room without crowding it, how he leads by example in silence, how he insists on holding a scene until it rings true. These are not fireworks. They are the invisible infrastructure of good work. That is why fans sensed sincerity years ago and why they still feel it now. So here we are at the beginning of a new year, having circled back to the beginning of a story that clearly never needed to end. The confession was brief, the impact huge. Maybe it touched you because it reminded you of your own first partner in something that mattered. Maybe it soothed you because it proved that not everything has to be public to be real. Or maybe you simply love seeing two people carry gratitude across the years without dropping it. Erkan's words don't belong to yesterday. They're not trapped in a moment of throwback emotion. They sit in the present, alive and relevant. In a landscape that rewards performance, he chose truth. In a season of announcements, he chose a memory. And in a world that always wants more, he gave just enough. If this bond speaks to you. If you remember Omar and Zara not just as characters but as stepping stones in two real lives, then you know why this admission matters. It explains the past. It clarifies the present. It leaves the door open for tomorrow without promising anything it can't deliver. Maybe they'll share a script again. Maybe they won't. Either way, the respect remains, untouched by distance, anchored by the work they did when both were still figuring out how to carry the weight of a story. Before we close, a thought to carry into the year: real friendship in this business is measured not by how loudly you celebrate together, but by how quietly you remember each other when the music fades. That's what we witnessed with Erkan and Hazal. A memory kept. A message sent. A kindness returned. The cameras don't always catch it. They don't have to. If this story moved you, if you found something of yourself in the calm force of their connection, don't forget to support the video. Share your thoughts below. Do you think we'll see Erkan Meriç and Hazal Subaşı together on screen again? Or is this bond destined to remain a private compass guiding two separate journeys? Whatever your answer, one truth feels certain as we step into a new year: some lights don't flicker when the stage goes dark. They stay on, steady and warm, exactly where they were first lit. From all of us here at Turkish Series Stars, thank you for watching and for caring about the human stories behind the roles. May your year be full of beginnings that honor where you started, and friendships that grow quieter, deeper, and more enduring with time.